Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jason Washington. I'm a DGC Ontario member, an assistant director, and assistant production manager, and as a month ago, DGC Ontario's newest board chair. I'm excited to be here today at TIFF, welcoming you on behalf of the organization for the first time in this role. We're very proud to present this film in tonight's panel on a topic that deeply matters to everyone in the screen sector, both in here in Canada and around the world. The issues at the heart of this documentary are connected to what our guild stands for: safety on set, respect in the workplace, and protecting the people who make the industry possible. It also reminds us that all of us, our guild, our panelists, and everyone working in production have a responsibility to advocate for healthy, respectful, and supportive working environments, while continuing to uphold the highest standards and best-in-class craft. Tonight's screening and discussion give us a chance to reflect on where we are, share ideas, and think together about how we can continue to build a safer future for everyone in production. Thank you all for being here for this special screening of Safe Sets, Dying to Work in the Film Industry, and to TIFF Lightbox for hosting this event. After the screening, we encourage you to stick around for a panel discussion, followed by a reception in the Founders Lounge. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Victoria Harding, the Executive Director of DGC Ontario.
Thank you, Jason, and thanks everybody for joining us here today. Safe Sets, Dying to Work in the Film Industry is about systemic issues in film production that are urgent and complex. This can be a difficult conversation to have, but tonight's goal is not to point fingers. It's to have an open and honest discussion about a work culture that has been established over many, many decades, and to collectively consider ways to strengthen not only our safety and well-being, but perhaps to make improvements that can, or to make changes that can lead to improvements in efficiency and creativity in the production industry as a whole. Putting this evening together has been a collaborative effort, and I want to thank everyone who made it possible. Thank you to the film's director, Dr. Paul Heinzelmann, here in the front row and here on the panel today. His producer, Becky Morrison, who will also be moderating tonight's panel, and thank you for making the trip to Toronto to share your film with us. We really appreciate it. You've created a really important and necessary film, and we're grateful to you for shining a light on these issues. Before we begin, I want to mention that we're especially proud to present this event because Safe Sets was brought to our attention by one of our DGC Ontario members, Assistant Director Paul Dudar. Paul played a huge role in connecting us with the filmmakers, and we want to thank him for the work that he put into making the screening possible. And I would invite you up to say a couple of words, Paul.
Thanks. So in 2023, and SAG and the WGA went on strike, I started my own little project called Showbiz Hobo. And my goal was to share movie and TV reviews written by people like us. And it was while I was chipping away at this that I came across Safe Sets. And now Safe Sets tells our story. And Dr. Paul's mission is our mission, and it's one that we must undertake arm in arm, PA to EP and EP to CEO. And I should also point out that Dr. Paul and Becky both donated the screening fee and their time to be here. I'd like to thank Victoria for working tirelessly to pull everything together, and Anne-Marie as well. And I'd also like to thank my wife, Alex, and my buddy, Steve, for being here tonight. And I also have to mention some colleagues whose absence from this world compels our attendance tonight. So Michelle Page, Igor Zambelli, Sean Burton, Bob Warwick, Ross Leslie, Rick Forsyth, Linda Keyworth, Johnny Asquith, Frank Poliak, Yara Yakubu, David Harp, Sonara Sayre, Jason De Silva, and Adam Sizzle Sadlai. I think there's probably a few others there. The conversations that we start in the panel need to continue beyond today. Anyway, thanks very much.
My name is Becky Morrison. I am a producer on this film, and I know how many feelings this can bring up. So we're here today to have a conversation, to feel those feelings, and also talk about what we can collectively do so that we can change this way that we're working behind the scenes. So I'm going to invite up our panelists one by one. And I'd like to begin with our first panelist, who is a primary care physician with training from the Harvard School of Public Health. After nearly 2 decades providing medical support on film productions, he's become a passionate advocate for systemic change. As the director of the film you just watched, his work challenges us to rethink a culture that too often treats people as expendable, and instead to reimagine one that allows crews to truly thrive. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Paul Heinzelmann. All right, our next panelist has worked across construction, theater, and the entertainment industry, specializing in lighting, electrical management, and on-set risk management. An IATSE 873 set safety specialist, he teaches training programs for film technicians across Ontario and is consulted with Netflix on their safety production protocols. He brings a broad perspective on creating safer productions, along with a deep commitment to collaboration, education, and helping departments learn from one another. Please join me in welcoming John O'Boyle. Our next panelist has spent more than 25 years at the intersection of labor relations and film production, first with the CMPA and now as business agent for NABIT. He serves on numerous committees helping shape safer working conditions across Ontario's film and TV industry, including serving as the co-chair of Section 21 Health and Safety Advisory Committee. He brings a deep care for people, relationships, and finding collaborative solutions to complex challenges. Let's all welcome Jason Mosick. Our next panelist has been a stunt professional in Toronto for over 20 years. Before breaking into film, she cut her teeth performing in high-diving stunt shows, the kind that involve a very high platform and a very small pool. She then went on to work as an actress, stunt double, stunt performer for over a decade, taking on high-impact work across a range of projects, including doubling for Bryce Dallas Howard on Twilight Eclipse. She's since moved on to stunt coordination, and outside of work, she collects dogs and chickens, or so she claims. Please join me in welcoming Alicia Turner. Our next panelist has spent close to 40 years working in film and TV as a first AD and a second unit director across Canada, the US, and Europe. A longtime member of both the DGC and the DGA, his credits include Hannibal, Reacher, Foundation, and many more. He brings a unique international perspective on what safe, healthier sets can look like, along with a deep commitment to preparation, leadership, and knowing when to hold the line. Let's all welcome Steve Webb. Our next panelist began his career in the lighting department before becoming a member of the CMPA, producing and production managing more than 50 productions over the course of several decades. His recent credits include Mayor of Kingstown, The Romanoffs, and Sullivan Crossing. He is the SVP of production at Muse Entertainment and brings a deep understanding of both the creative and logistical realities of production, along with a passion for creative problem solving. Let's all welcome Alex Jordan. Our next panelist and moderator is the founder and CEO of The Light, a production company built on the belief that emotionally healthy environments are paramount for creativity and high performance. She began her career on the movie I Am Legend, went on to produce the visual content for U2's World Tour, and has since produced and executive produced more than 1,000 commercials and promos for the world's biggest brands and studios. She has spent years studying the history of Hollywood and uses that research to inform a new framework for conscious production, and also happens to be a producer of the film you just watched. Please join me in welcoming me, Becky Marr. Awesome. Hi, everybody. Hi. So good to be here. And really thank you to the DGC for hosting this event and having this important, courageous conversation. I'm just curious, out of people in the audience, will you raise your hand if you work or have ever worked on set? Okay. Yeah. Amazing. So we're all experts here. I'd like to start out just by going around and maybe going down the line and asking, in your opinion, in 1 or 2 words, what do you think is the biggest issue, the biggest obstacle to crew's well-being right now? We'll start with you, Alex.
Sleep depravity, for sure. And it's also the biggest challenge because it takes all of us, government, safety, unions, everybody, to make it work.
I agree with Alex. I'd say in one word, it's hours spent on a set.
Same.
I think it's saying no, having the confidence and having the ability to say no.
Yeah, I think with all that, it's time. On-set or off-set, those challenges happen with everybody involved in the film, and time overall, and the schedule, or how it all comes together.
Yeah, I would. I like to call it a culture of heroic exhaustion.
I'm going to answer this one too, and I'd say extraction. I just think having a culture of extraction, we're extracting from people, from the planet, all of it, I think that's the biggest issue. So, as we saw in the film, and everyone here who's worked on set, and even those of you who haven't, have experienced the pressure, like you're saying, to stay silent and to push past our limits and to be heroically exhausted. What do you think would need to change systemically, structurally, culturally for that to shift?
I have I guess I should. I was like, all these words, all these ideas. I feel like one thing in this movie that really struck is that the minute we fear losing work, we'll sell out for everything. And I will say that I suggested, as an effort to have fewer, just to be more respectful of the night shoot hours, I suggested to our union that we, in our negotiations, we say that we offer that our post, let's say the dawn or the nighttime hours would be a premium for producers so that they couldn't be reckless with their schedules, where I've been in studios shooting day scenes at like 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And I think, and I don't want to say it's, the unions didn't carry through, but I know that was quickly dropped by the negotiating team. And I think maybe that's fear of loss, but at the same time, that would have been really helpful if we were more expensive at night, in my opinion. And I'm one who has done many stunts at like the very last minute on a night shoot where I'm dying and it feels very unsafe. And so I don't know if that answers anything, but that was a good example of how we tend to not give in always at the last minute.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned, time on set and offset. Absolutely, our schedules have compacted so much, and some of the series we're now doing are 8 feature films, and we're preparing the next episode on a TV schedule. And so even the offset crews, I've known offset crews that have worked for 7 or 9 months, 7 days a week without a break, without any time off. And it just snowballs from there.
Yeah, I was going to dovetail to that. A little bit is understanding also, like all the departments, all the people that work on sets or offset have to understand that there are jobs all throughout this industry, even on one production, that are working different hours. They're working different times. Construction departments sometimes are working 7 days a week between 3 different shows. And that's just because they want to make the money. They want to do that. Nights is a good example, but there's also day crews that are doing it. So, and people, we have to schedule these things for all various reasons to fulfill the creative, right? So I think that starting with something like this, a conversation, something we can share, your great film, gets that going, and hopefully we can have more discussions so that crew can understand producer problems, unions can understand crew problems and producer problems, then we can all kind of make it as best we can, get there or a little bit better.
Well, I mean, I think I agree with everybody, but I'll address from sort of a scheduling and I guess an AD standpoint. But like you mentioned, I've worked in Europe for the past 11 or 12 years, almost exclusively, and it's a very different model there. It's we work on basically a 10-hour days. You never do more than a 10-hour day. Now that's 10 hours from call to wrap. There are no unions there. I mean, there's performer unions, but that 10-hour day is pretty much based on an agreement which is a handshake with usually myself as the representative of production with a key grip or the gaffer usually, who are the crew reps. And they will give you maybe 1 or 2 days where they'll go over if you need to complete a shot, but after that it's pretty much tools down, which I respect, and I respect what they do as far as night work goes. The last 2 shows I've done over there, we've tried to minimize our night work as much as we can, whether that be technically with blacking out locations or rewriting the script. They don't encourage shooting weekends. It's a different mentality there, as Europe is very different from North America, but it's more of a work to live as opposed to live to work, which we are doing here. Our model here of a 13-hour day, when you actually break it down, 13 hours from call to wrap is not 13 hours. It's for the majority of the crew. You've got you've got ADs, you've got transportation, you've got hair, you've got makeup, you've got stunts, you've got grips and electrics coming in for pre-calls. You've got camera coming in for pre-calls. Some of these 13-hour days from call to wrap actually translate to a 15 or 16-hour day for some people. And on top of that, they have to drive themselves home and get themselves to work, which Paul addressed with sleep deprivation and the dangers of driving back and forth to work. So our model is, it's very different than the European model. And Becky asked me a good question when we were she was sort of vetting us, I guess, for the panel, and that was not to swear, and also if I found a difference in the ways the crew work there, and I do. I mean, people doing a 10-hour day, are going to go home and they're going to see their families. They're going to, they want to be in the pub by 9 or 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and they're a happier crew. There's certainly a far more productive crew. With a 13-hour model, you're shooting 6 hours in the morning. In Toronto, we break for an hour lunch here. Most of the rest of North America breaks for a half an hour, but that translates to, with last man through, that'll translate to about a 45-minute to an hour lunch anyway. Then there's also, cast touch-ups after that, and there's lighting. So in essence, your lunch break can sometimes be almost 2 hours where people sleep, and you come back to do 6 hours more work, which is about 50% as productive as your morning, your 6-hour morning. So productivity, people enjoying their work is a huge thing. Sorry I'm taking so long. But also, the props master in the film also noted that, that he loved the first 8 hours of his job. And in the next 2 hours, things started to wane. And then the next 4 hours, he disliked his job, which is unfortunate because the majority of people I know in this business do like their jobs, but they don't like the hours. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because when I think about this a lot, and I really think about, like, is it systemic? Is it cultural? Is it both? Because what's going on there in the example that Steve just gave? Like, is it that in Europe they love their families more than we love them in the US and Canada? Like, doubtful. Do they like going to the pub more?
Love ourselves less.
Yeah, like what's going on? Like, why is something like that acceptable within the industry, do you think, in Europe, and it's something that we can't make happen here in the US or here in Canada and in the US?
Well, I think it's just we've set a bad precedent here. I mean, we've set a precedent where we're basing our workday on a 13-hour model. I mean, Europe never had that precedent. And don't get me wrong, I'm working on American shows over there, and fairly big budget American shows. So, the producers, the directors, they're coming over and they're doing shorter days. And they can do it. Well, what we're doing it in 13-hour days in North America, I strongly believe, and I've been, scheduling movies and TV shows for almost 40 years, we can do in a 10-hour day. But you understand, too, that this 10 hours, you're not breaking for lunch. These are continuous hours with a rolling lunch where they serve lunch for 4 hours in the middle of the 10-hour day, and departments spell each other off to go and get their meals. If I feel that someone on the crew has not had a chance to get their meal, I will take a 15-minute break or a 20-minute break because everybody has to eat. But, I mean, you know, it's bad precedents. We've set bad precedents, like I think you were mentioning. I mean, you know, we used to do TV movies in 25 days, and, you know, they whittled them down to 18, then they're down to 16. Now they're doing, you know, some Christmas movies in 12 days. I mean, these are just bad precedents, and once you set that precedent, I think it's very difficult to bring about change, to go back to that model. You can do it, yeah, and that's what I'm hoping we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, Jason.
What's interesting, though, is how they're able to do it there and why it's not something that's feasible to be adopted here. I mean, the film showed, quite rightly so, you know, the steps and the strides that IATSE in the U.S. made with things like daily turnaround and weekend turnaround and things like that, which are fantastic. And I think pretty much all of the unions and guilds in Ontario here have had for 25 plus years. But that's not a hard out like what you're talking about. They can still do whatever the hell they want and bring you back 4 hours later. They just got to pay for it. And when you're talking about some of these companies and some of the size of these productions and whatever, it's nothing to them. They'll eat the turnaround. They'll eat the weekend turnaround, the daily turnaround, the meal penalty. They don't care. That, I think, is the fundamental issue that needs to be overcome, and to raise the awareness and make them care, to then not do it and respect your time outside of work and at work to implement those changes.
How do you think that can happen? Like, what are some ideas about how can make them care?
I've got an idea.
Says the producer.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a story. So as a producer, I had this shocking realization and talking to a union rep at a bar, at an event or something. And I said, do you know that there's a document called a budget? And the budget, matching the budget is a schedule. And the schedule then turns into a timesheet or a call sheet. All these documents, remember that I said documents. The schedule the AD does has a timeline of the day. We're going to take 3 hours to do this shot, 2 hours to do this shot, 1 hour lunch, then we're back, blah, blah, blah. This is what's there, documented. I've got a budget that says every single person that's going to work for me, how many hours they're going to work, because I got to know how much I got to pay them. So every department throughout the budget, this document says that my gaffer's going to work 12 hours plus his pre-call plus a wrap. And then my transport department is going to work, oh, look at this, 22 hours is what I'm going to pay a driver. And that's where the problem starts. Because then I say, well, how can I have paid someone to watch a generator $10,000 in 1 week? Did I need that person to do that job? No. I can't control the hiring in transport, for example. One of the big things, because of going back to the document, I'm not allowed to split shift. So I can't control the transport department and the drivers to split shift, bring in a night crew, bring in a day crew to make them safe for a bunch of reasons. One day, someone's going to die, and it could be a driver because of 22-hour days, and there's going to be a document of a budget that goes into a court that says, Alex planned to work this person this long. He then had a schedule that says it's going to last this long. And in court, I'm going to go, oh, but I'm not allowed to split shift. And then the unions are going to say to me, you could have added another day or two. And they're not wrong. But the problem is then I go to jail for that example. So this made me start to think, what are the things that we can do? In Ontario, we have a thing called the CVOR. It's for commercial vehicles. So on a film set, if I rent the prop master's van, it's his personal vehicle. It's not regulated by that CVOR. All the minivans that we rent to pick up casts, pick up crew, shuttle vans, they're not regulated by the CVOR because they're minivans. But ultimately, every vehicle rented by production should be under the CVOR as a commercial because we're making a commercial product. By proxy, that would make us all have everybody driving any car we rent, they would have to use a logbook. And they would not be allowed to work the hours that they're given unless they had to break or have a hotel. This pull of thread will disrupt everything because what it does is that people won't make as much money, and it affects the union's ability to stop split shifting because the drivers would not be able to do it anymore. We'd have to enforce it, so they have to address it. But there is a culture that you're talking about, which is that a lot of people, and I hire a lot of people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands a year. And they're in this to make money, and systemically, we make money in the spring through summer up to Christmas, and then we squirrel it all away so we can leave out those months after. And I was a film student, 20 years old. I grew up as an electric. I've done all of this. I was just like this when I started. And one of the things that scared me to death was back then wasn't the drinking, driving, and all the drugs going around. It was actually driving home and falling asleep at the wheel. And so I've always been scared of this factor. And I think that we can work, I think once we, and I hate to say that from a producer's point of view, but like I love unions and I'm pro-union, but the unions have to allow us to produce and do things kind of like in the European way a little bit, allow us to do some things, negotiate with us that allow, because if we could work through lunch and reduce our days and all of a sudden overtime changed at a different strategy, or maybe the penalties were higher if we went over that 10-hour day. Let's restructure it so then by saving that time, we'll add days to the schedule. But if you allow us to produce it in certain ways and think outside the box, then we can do it. If we're trapped in a pinhole where we can't do things, then we can't help. That's my opinion on it. Long-winded, but it's one solution.
Do you want to say something, Alicia?
Oh, I was going to ask, at some point when I was working, we had independent safety reps on set. Like Disney had one, and then I just remembered I haven't seen one on my set in a long time. And I was wondering if anyone knew where that went. Because it's a lot easier to say no when there's someone who's...
So I've actually done that. I've held that role. I've worked for both studios, and I've worked independently on productions. And that's an even more awkward position, because if I'm working as a safety person on set, I'm also responsible for everybody that's got a chair behind the monitor. And a lot of those people don't want to hear the word no.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And so as a safety person, I've been in that situation where I've had to shut the set down. And fortunately, I'm on this side of the career where I'm not really that intimidated by, I'm not starting my career. But I've seen them hire, happened on the Rust show. I've seen them hire young people that don't have the experience, don't have the knowledge, can't put it into a decision on the impact of set if they have to shut it down or if something's got to happen. And so they refuse to say no. I've had people that have been working many, many years in this business in positions that should have said no, and they've called me to help make that decision or guide them on how they can make it. So even as a safety person, it's extremely difficult, extremely awkward. And so there are people that have worked in safety who refuse to do it now unless they work directly for a studio. So that
But
they
that's
have
what I'm
that
saying
backing.
is we had them for a while, and then
Yeah.
they just kind of disappeared, and I wasn't sure why.
Well,
People,
I
people don't
think-
want the job.
Yeah, it is. I mean, every studio has a safety representative, and I know several of them because I've been doing it for so long, and it is mandated. But generally, they'll show up for the tech survey, they'll show up for the production meeting, and then they'll be on set for anything they deem, risky. Like they'll always be there for stunts and that, but they won't remain for the entire shoot. They'll come and go as they please.
The problem is also that's just the big studios. Like there's like even me as the production company I work for, that we produce all across the country. Some shows are bigger than others. We produce Hallmark films in different areas, and we're always looking. Clients from the U.S. will come to us and say, "Where should we shoot our thing? We have this much dollars." So then we go across the country. Vancouver is this much dollars. If you do that in Toronto, it's this much dollars. If you do that in Halifax, it's this much dollars. And so that's how it's kind of done. It's always like, here's the money we have. How do we make it work? Then we kind of backtrack from there.
Yeah, well, it's bringing up you want to say something, Jason? Go ahead.
I guess had a question for Alex on that point. I mean, we hear nothing, over the last few years in particular, we hear nothing about budget shrinking. You don't have as much money to produce as you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever the case may be. Doesn't that inherently lend itself to doing shorter days because you just simply can't afford them?
Yeah, so the appetite hasn't changed. So yeah, we're doing budgets for big shows like Legendary came to us for something that was not a Legendary budget because they're feeling the squeeze. So they still want to make the television we all love and watch, but they want to make it lower and lower and lower.
Right.
So what things get cut? Like that's what happens. Like, and so you can't afford you. Even them, they're trying to go to 8 days when they would do 10-day episodes or 14 for something like Legendary. But they're looking at the Canadian model, and we make Canadian shows in 7.5 days. We showed them that we can do it. So now they're coming to us saying, how do you do it in Canada? Like if we had a Canadian way, we're like, this is what we do, and these are the things. And we're just honest people trying to make the shows and bring the jobs.
Yeah, I'd love to add something to that because I'm a producer too. I own a commercial production company. And so I'm doing, big budget shoots, and we have cost consultants and that kind of thing. And often cost consultants will look at the budget and they're like, do you really need 5 PAs? And I'm like, you want to save money? Cut a shoot day. You're 5 PAs. That's not where you're going to save money. Cutting a safety person or a medic is not where you're going to save money. It's the days. So to answer that question too, it's much cheaper to go into overtime than it is to have another shoot day. As a producer, like the days are what cost a lot of money. And what I wanted to kind of ask of the group as well, and I want to throw this to you, Paul, is that, we're talking a lot about safety. And in my mind, safety is really the baseline. Like being able to work and survive your workday, go home alive, like that's pretty basic. Like what would it look like to actually create an industry not where we're just surviving, but where we're thriving? Like, what would it look like to have film workers leave set feeling better than when they arrived, energized? And I know that that's a lot of the work that you're doing, Paul. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think, and to answer the question before, one of the things that I hope to bring to add some value to the challenge of making film sets safer is more data. And there's that old phrase that what you measure, you manage. And so the quality of data is really important. And in the film industry, most of the data that reports about things like suicide rates and injuries, which are extraordinarily high, isn't coming from the main stakeholders in the industry. The other, it's great that they're gathering data because they care enough to try to quantify problems, and you can address them. But the other issue is that sometimes the quality of that data is not reliable. So what I've been sort of fortunate to have happen is that group in the film, the Harvard Center for Work, Health, and Well-Being, we have now reconnected, and we are doing a study, a small survey study, and in fact, this is way too long of an answer for your question. I realize this, but it's called Thriving on Set. And what Harvard did is they created this framework, and they're using it to study other industries. In a nutshell, it's got 6 domains: physical and mental health. The sleep is the big issue there. Emotional and psychological, and social. Social being sort of a sense of community, a place where you can make complaints and not feel like there's going to be retribution. But then, more importantly, are bits like job design and work experience, where are you working in a position where you feel valued? Are you working in a position where you get recognized for your work? Are you in a position where you're learning more about your craft because someone wants you to learn more? Work-life integration, which is really work-life balance, is another important metric, and I think the film industry is off the charts in that particular area. So, and then finally, the basics are job security and fair pay and potentially benefits and all the things that add that sense of security. A long way of saying thriving is the word that they use, and that means going to work feeling energized, renewed, and not depleted. And now there's a framework for it. And if you all go to our website and answer our survey, I'd be extraordinarily grateful. safesetsmovie.org. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Like we're getting close to wrapping up this part of the conversation, and then we're going to open it up to all of you. So, in this spirit of solutions and change, like what are some other ideas you have about how we can start to change some of these cultural and systemic issues?
Well, my fear with trying to change things, it goes back to what I think we discussed before we showed up here, and sort of historically, even now, if you want to try to initiate change, the business is slow now. It's slow internationally, it's slow in Europe, it's slow here, and I don't know if you're in a new bargaining agreement now, or where we stand with standard agreements and that, but usually it comes prior to that too, and everyone's like change. Oh, but it's winter, or things are slow, so we don't want to ruffle the union's feathers. We don't want to lose work in Toronto. We don't want to lose work in Vancouver. We don't want to lose work in California, wherever we're negotiating. So I think it's we want change, but there's this fear of pissing off the studios and alienating a city, or a country. And every time we've moved forward with any change, I mean, we've been successful. Certainly, I'm involved with the DGA and the DGC, and certainly well aware of IATSE 873 and 667 and NAVET. But I mean, every time we have been successful with certain things, turnaround being one. But I think it's just this fear that we don't want to lose work. And again, another thing, when you want to propose a shorter workday and maybe try to propose following a European model, you've got a lot of young members in your union, especially in the technical, 873 union that want to make money and want to buy a house, and they want to do the 14, 15 hours. They want the overtime. Some of the older guys, like myself, don't want to do 14 or 15-hour days, and one of the reasons why I'm working in Europe. But so it's sort of this. You got to try to please all your members, and I'm sure Vic understands that, as you guys do. So, I mean, if you don't have all your membership in support of you trying to shorten your workday or deal with turnaround or whatever, that's the problem.
Yeah, and what's the solution, Jason?
Sorry, I was just don't get me wrong. By no means is it perfect, but I do think things are slightly ahead of the curve here in Ontario. I think a number of the unions and guilds have put in measures in their collective agreements, things like hotel requirements after a certain number of hours, or getting a ride home, or frankly just the right to refuse work. Now, I don't disagree. People are still, this goes to what I said at the outset, people having the confidence to speak up and say something. People don't want to be labeled as the shit disturber. Sorry, we weren't supposed to swear. And for fear of not getting the next job. But I think we have taken those strides. We do have the Section 21 Health and Safety Committee here in Ontario that has put together the safety guidelines to govern how we do what we do. The Section 21 Committee is an acknowledgement by the Ministry of Labour here in Ontario that we do things different than the real world, which is why we exist and why the guidelines exist. I think that's a nod to, and in the film, obviously you mentioned they are just guidelines. There's no teeth to them. They're recommendations. That is the case here in Ontario as well. However, our guidelines are also endorsed by and posted on the Ministry of Labour website, which actually gives them a little more teeth. So if, God forbid, a Ministry of Labour inspector does come to inspect an incident, that is going to be the first thing that they're going to refer to. And did you follow and implement these industry-approved minimum standards as a starting place, plus then whatever legislation requires. I think, frankly, we have NABET and IATSE here in Ontario. That is, I think, a benefit and a distinction. People can pick and choose the type of shows they want to work on. Let's be honest, domestic shows don't have the budgets that U.S. studio shows have. You want to do shorter days? You can work on domestic shows with NABET. We do a lot of kids shows here in Ontario. They can't do long hours. So I think do have things that are to our benefit here in Ontario that maybe some other jurisdictions don't have.
Yeah, that's great. I want to throw something in too, because I do think a lot of this is also culture change. And one of the things that is brought up in the film is this idea that we're sacrificing ourselves for the production. That's very common culturally. It's like when you think about the language that we use on set, so much of it is militaristic, it's violent, it comes from that, right? We're running gun, we're gonna die over here, let's kill it, it's a shotgun mic, shooting, we're shooting kids, we're shooting dogs, we're shooting everything. And I feel that personally, like, that some of it is also a culture change and about language. So personally, I try to change the language. I don't say run and gun, I say run and fun. I use filming instead of shooting, because when we are acting like we're at war, we're naturally going to be sacrificing ourselves. And so the more that we can start to treat this like a job that's in a creative industry and less like we're on a battlefield, I think that will also make a difference.
Well, I was going to dovetail off that is that I have seen a change in the industry in my 25 plus years for sure. Like, things have totally changed since when I was an electric, and I'm also seeing those changes trend with the younger generation. So they kind of naturally go through that. COVID did a lot for us, even more than you pointed out in your film, Paul, is that we also the harassment seminars, now seminars on everything now, we put it out there, and people are way more open to talking, way more in front, and come to us, and we respect everybody more. There's more dialogue happening, for sure. So I think that's happening. And I just wanted to say on Jason's note is that I remember on Mayor of Kingstown, it was 2021, and the unions in the U.S. were having their technical strike, and it was a big one. And the I-873 people that were on my set were like, we need to go in solidarity. And I said to a lot of people, I'm like, do you know how good you have it compared to that agreement? Like, they were fighting for 10 hours of turnaround. Like, there's a lot of things that we have here that is way better than down south that you guys have. And the fight primarily down south is you guys are fighting for healthcare all the time, which drives all of your problems, is that you don't have healthcare and they want health insurance, and we don't have that here. So on top of that, our fights are for little things that make the difference, and turnarounds and hotel rooms and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I never thought that living in Brooklyn, I would be living down south. But
You
turns out I
south.
live in the south.
You're in the south.
Would love to open
Welcome
it up
to the north.
those of you in the audience. What was like watching the film? What ideas do you have about what we can be doing differently?
What I've said is make watching this film required as a condition of joining any of the unions. That's one. Script, as you pointed out, language. Also, the whole planet is goosed up in fascist talk right now, and that includes scripts. I don't watch movies about blown up cars. That's, safety begins with the script. I had a conversation with a producer once when I was the art director for Grounding Mars, really dating myself there. And I said, John, as in John Delmage, you know what? I would happily take a cut in pay if only I could have a reasonable week. Gloves off. Just tell me what it looks like on your side of the fence. And he said, the problem is the insurance companies. Their rates are so high for insuring properties, vehicles, blah, 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 that they could not afford a longer week. It's the insurance that was driving up the highest cost. I don't know if you find that accurate. He was a TV producer. That's what he said to me. Okay, maybe he was just lying.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm a little bit concerned that we've focused on things being better here as a comparison to the US, and not focusing on thriving for what could be. So I just wanted to challenge the group just one last chance. If everyone could just share from their perspective in their specific domain what they could do after this. It could be small, it could be a conversation, like what would you do if in your specific role with your specific influence to move the mark forward? Given that I agree, we have a much better baseline to start from, like how can we leverage that forward?
would just go back to what I would do. My thing is about a CVOR and looking at transportation, that the department that doesn't on screen require all of those levels.
Well, I would look at other models like Europe, and maybe try to use that as our baseline, and then do some comparisons. Again, as Paul said, statistics are great, great ammunition for initiating any change, and statistics are hard to find. Sadly, most of the statistics you find in this industry are like the credit roll we had at the end, which are people who have passed. So I would say, yeah, I'd look at other models that seem to be working and people seem to be happier. I mean, some of the best crews I've worked with have been in Eastern Europe, where they're working shorter days and seeing their families. I think there's less mental health stress, less physical stress. They're happier in their jobs. So, I mean, I've been there, I've seen it, the model works. And I've also been here for many years, and I don't believe the model works. So,
Thank you. Let's go. This will be our closing. So let's just run down the line and just say a sentence or two of what you think could be done. You need a
I do need. I'm a pretty niche market, so in my in stunts, I would advocate for pulling stunts up to reasonable hours and not pushing them to the end of the day, because that's what we tend to do, because there's always one more thing before we get to the stunt.
I think having this conversation in forums like this and starting the ball rolling and having more discussions internally, maybe amongst the unions and guilds, as we all collectively go into bargaining 2-3 years from now, whatever our respective cycles are, and see if there are ways that we could partner together on things and to try and change it collectively. I don't think any one of us can do it ourselves, and I don't think it's going to happen, obviously, overnight also. So I think, starting that ball rolling, and thank you for putting this together again, DGC and folks, to start this conversation. I think this is where it starts.
One thing I've, and I try to do now, I teach a lot. I teach safety. And for all the years on set and working in the industry. And so I try to add a little bit into what I'm teaching. I teach joint health and safety, and the Joint Health Safety Committee courses. And I've taught a lot of people. And I find when we come together with that training, we learn from each other as much as we learn from the book that we're taking it from. But then I try to add other things into it, like I teach people how to fill in a risk assessment. So it's not just about a gun, or it's not just about flipping a car. We can use that in a lot of other things as well. And it's all learning from each other.
My commitment is to take the problem and look at it from a public health stance, and work with this group at Harvard now that's excited about the topic, get more data, and use that data to make the arguments for change.
Awesome. And I'll speak on behalf of producers. And I think as producers, we know how to create an experience on set where people are thriving, because we do it all the time for talent. And on commercials, we do it for the client and agency. And so I think the one change that we can make is to expand that and really focus on the crew's experience, and to create an experience on set where everybody feels good, not just those who are above the line. And thank you very much.